Hello, everyone. This is Larry Gordon with the Five Towns Jewish Times in our regularly scheduled or irregularly scheduled podcast available on the various websites and platforms on the internet. As this one will be as soon as we do it, and of course at 5tjt.com as well. My guest in our studio today is Rabbi Aryeh Ginzberg, a good friend of, I guess, almost 20 years. I'm guessing 15 to 20 years probably. I usually guess when I see someone that I haven't seen maybe for a few weeks, I say, last time I saw you was 10 years ago, right? Because and most of the time they say to me, yeah, it's like 10, 12 years ago. And because that's how time is these days. 10 years is like a few weeks, but we know each other a long time, and we're good friends. And we want to talk about several specific things relevant to the rabbinate, and being a rabbi all these years, leading congregations in these modern times. Perhaps it's more satisfying, or at the same time more complex and challenging than ever before. But I wanted to submit a theory, not that theory, but a theory about the generation, the times that we live in. My question is this the most valuable, most accomplished generation in the history of Klal Yisrael? I'm asking that for a reason. Because, we studied, this is going to be seen over the next series of weeks or months, but just in the last couple of weeks, we learned about Kedas Yitzchak. Avram Avinu took his son Yitzchak ostensibly to slaughter him on Har Moriah. And then we learned about Ohel Sarala from the guests. But some of our commentaries observed that the fact of the matter is, he didn't really murder Yitzchak. He was spared at the last moment. The fact of the matter is, on the idea and the concept of welcoming guests, they were malachim. They didn't really eat. So he really wasn't mekayim the mitzvah of achnasas orchim. Our generation, this generation here in what's almost 2020, 5,780, our generation has been taken to a next level, a step further. So, is this the greatest generation in the history of Klal Yisrael?
It's a very interesting question, whether it's the greatest generation. I mean, I think Chazal always speak about the Skatnu Adoros, where the generations go down from Har Sinai, and so I guess in that scope, our generation is a lot smaller than previous generations. The challenges that some of our grandparents had to go through were beyond comprehension. That anybody today can't even wrap their arms around it. Living through the Shoah and et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, we're very proud of it. We can be very proud of our accomplishments today, and at the same time, commensurate to the challenges. Challenges are just unlike any other generation before.
But of course, the challenges are great, and when you talk about survivors, children of survivors, grandchildren of survivors, I've been reading about that in the last year. I wrote about it a couple of times. I think I mentioned in a recent column that Elie Wiesel said in an interview before he passed away 4 or 5 years ago, he said that being a child or a grandchild of Holocaust survivors means that you're impacted by an experience you never had. That's a mind-opening, it's a mind-blowing type of concept, and you see it. You see it if you have in your family, if your parents or grandparents survived, you see it that it's mamish. You have this sense and these reactions to something that you really never experienced, but you are involved with and influenced by the trauma to some extent, as if you actually really experienced it, perhaps. So I know that we like to say about ourselves, in these modern times, that that's like you said, the Duros as they pass by weaken, right? But the fact of the matter is, I don't know if that proves itself out. I know we're very self-deprecating and maybe a little humble, we don't want to say that this is the greatest generation. It's something for people to discuss on a radio or TV or internet show, not something to walk around, confident that we're the greatest generation. But I think the challenges that face us out there, the crises, and more than anything else, I think is the fact that the outside influences in the world, I think for the first time in this generation and the previous generation perhaps, has managed to seep into our otherwise rather insular type of way of life. Is that what did you find that we are impacted? Klal Yisrael today, Orthodox Jewry, wherever they find themselves, are impacted by things that are affecting the outside world. I mean, any number of things: drug problems, alcohol problems, gambling problems. And those are the easy ones to talk about.
That is true. I would tell you that growing up years ago, there were always issues that were considered problems, world problems out in the world, and a complete separate category of problems that exist in our Gehila, in our communities. Mm-hmm. It was two different set of problems. Today, I think for the most part, we share the same problems. We have a different focus and a different emphasis, and we deal with it differently. But every unfortunate problem out in the world is in our community, and we're living it and breathing it. And to some extent, we close our eyes to it. We don't want to see it. We don't want to admit to it. But we're living it and experiencing it, and it's a difficult situation.
Because it's not something that I don't think we have reconciled ourselves to the reality of that. When we hear something like that happens, we consider it to be an aberration, not something that is routine or that we're going to incorporate into our psyche and accept as something that we have to expect to happen. But unfortunately, these things we hear about, shocking, sometimes more shocking than others, they seem to be occurring with greater frequency as time goes by.
To a large extent, even, I guess, one of the most serious and probably a problem that many people still would like to sweep under the rug is abuse and suicides and drug addictions. If someone would have asked me 20 years ago, do we need an organization to deal with abuse victims, physical, sexual abuse victims, drug people committing suicide or attempting to commit suicide or thinking about it? Do we need an organization for it? I think that person is something wrong with him, because in our community it doesn't exist. Right. Today, I personally am very involved with Amudim, with an organization that deals with this, and unfortunately, we need another few organizations like that to deal with this. So
what happened? What happened to our infrastructure? Where do you? I know we love to assign blame, even though that doesn't solve any problems. So I'm not looking to assign blame, but where's the weakness? Is the weakness at home? Is it in school? Is it in yeshiva? Is it society influences just too overwhelming to be able to resist?
I think that, from my experience, I think it's twofold. Whenever I hear people get up and speak, they blame yeshivas. It makes my blood boil when they blame rabbis.
The yeshivas don't blame the home very often.
Right, the home and the home
blames the yeshivas. It's very convenient.
It's everybody blames somebody else, but at the end of the day, I think really it's down to two factors. One is that you and I, Larry, even though you look a lot older, but we in our generation, we grew up. We were one generation away from Holocaust survivors, as you started with. The challenges of life were different. Our parents just wanted to see that they can hold a roof over their heads, they can send their kids to yeshiva, and put food on the table and survive. And it was in our psyche. It was in our, just survive, make your parents proud. Survival is what we focused on, to do the right thing. We're generations away from that now.
So there was no time for the Narishkeit.
There was
That's what you're saying.
That was one big factor. It's a whole different thing. The things that get young people upset today wouldn't even be on the radar 30 years ago, 40 years ago. It wouldn't be. I deal with Shalom Bayis issues on a daily basis. And sometimes a couple walks out, a young couple got married weeks ago, months ago, or a few years ago, and they walk out, and I just sitting in my chair, and I got to catch my breath. I said, this is what the issue is? Sometimes, yes, there's serious issues that have to be dealt with, and sometimes the only way to deal with it is by ending the marriage. But sometimes the issues that are in front of me are issues that would not even be on our radar screen 20, 30 years ago. It's a different, and that is a major factor. Our young people do not understand the struggles of what it is and what they're required to do and what the responsibilities are. It's a me generation. It's everything about me. That's a major factor. But of course, what you touched on is the issue of that we're with the internet world that we live in, and we're open to everything. And I don't mean just the things that are improper, which of course is a major challenge. I would share with you just a quick thing that, remember, this goes back now 20 years ago. I was invited to speak. Rav Pam Zechron Livracha had called me and asked me there was going to be a major sifa in Brooklyn for women on tznius issues. And there was a few terrible things that happened, and they were organizing one. They expected to have 2,000 women there that they were hoping for. And he asked me to speak. And I went to ask him what he thought I should say, and etc. And it was like struggling to figure out what am I supposed to say? How do I approach this subject? And behold, I'm at a wedding, and I see Ramatas Solomon come in. He should have refuah shlema mashkiach from Lakewood. And I know that he speaks to women. He did before he took ill, once, twice a year to Lakewood. He speaks to women on all kinds of topics. And I felt there's nobody better to approach than him. And he told me something. We spoke for 3 or 4 minutes, and he told me something that I've never forgotten. He said to me, when I told him what the issue was, the topic, and if he has any recommendation, I figured he would tell me over some Gemaras, some Chazal, some Musa Svarim. So he turned to me and he grabbed my arm and he said to me the following. He says, Rabbi Aryeh, tell him one thing, that I thank Hashem every single day that I was born in the generation that I was born in, because I'd be born in the generation we have today, I would never be able to stand up to the challenges of the internet and everything that's out there. I couldn't do it. So I thank Hashem every day for allowing me to be born in a different generation. This is Mashgiach from Lakewood, who's an incredible Baal Mussar, who's a person who has a depth of understanding of human nature and of human psyche. And yet, this is what he told me. And I started my speech with that, and I ended my speech with the same thing. I repeated it. And I repeated it many, many times. The challenges are incredible. And it just, to get away from it is just impossible.
I mean, we marvel and we celebrate the freedom that we have here in the United States, in Eretz Yisrael, in most of the world, actually, freedom of religion, so on and so forth. There's Chabad house in every country, in every state in the United States, every country in the world practically, with rare exceptions. So, are we creatures that can only do what we're supposed to be doing when we're under some kind of intense pressure or persecution? That we can't handle freedom? Is that what it's about?
It's the question. When I was young and I was in yeshiva, we were learning Tanakh. I'll never forget, after learning through Yeshua, Shoft, and Malachim, I went over to my Rebbe, and I was almost embarrassed to ask this question because I figured that maybe it's an inappropriate question. So I asked him, I said, could I just ask you a question? How is it that every single time, in every few years in Tanakh, through our history, we find that Tanakh says again, the whole of Klal Yisrael was involved in Avodah Zarah, every king. We had no good society except from David, Shlomo HaMelech, and after that, it went downhill completely. What is it with us? And the answer is that, yes, the challenges are immense, and sometimes difficulty, anti-Semitism, and the pressures of Klal Yisrael that we're under the thumb of the world, under the fist of the world, I should say, is what allows us sometimes to refocus, to re-energize ourselves. But you're right. It's a very...
At the end of, Parshas Bereshis, he says that Kadosh Baruch Hu took comfort in the fact that that he created man on earth and not in the heavens, because if he would have created man in the heavens, he would have corrupted the angels. So, I mean, it's hard to understand. After all, we are his creation. We are a product of his handiwork. I know we have this freedom of choice, so to speak, this bechira that was invested in us. I don't know. Are we incapable of handling it? Are we mishandling it?
Listen, we know that in Germany, when the laws of emancipation came out and the Jews were given full rights and full voting rights and all rights that were given to every German citizen, that was the same time that reform began, and Haskalah and all those things, because it takes away, the Jews are not kept in the ghetto, they're out of the ghetto, then we'll be like the rest of the nation in the world. It's very frightening. And the great founder of the Chabad dynasty, the Baal Tanya, speaks about this in his writings, and he says that it's an incredible thing that the Esav son of Yaakov is really what saves Klal Yisrael. In a sense, what saves Klal Yisrael. And it's frightening that we have to be that until Mashiach comes.
You touch on a very contemporary point too, because the only time that the people of Israel, I don't want to, ghettoize it by saying Klal Yisrael, and I'm talking about, Jews, regardless of what their affiliations are. The only time we're unified is when we're under some kind of extreme, intense threat or pressure, whether it's from Iran, Gaza, or Israel's under bombardment. Everybody gets together, but under only these dire, potentially, tragic circumstances. That's when we get together. And then after it passes, as it inevitably does, we peel away and we resort to our old ways again.
I will tell you, it's, it's a scene which we read about all the time. We know about it. I guess until you see it in front of you, it's not that traumatic, but it was maybe 4 years ago, when they had all these protests in Yerushalayim, all over Israel. A certain group of ultra-Orthodox Jews in Israel, certain groups of Lithuanian Jews that were more militant, and they were blocking traffic and streets and causing all kinds of mayhem. And I was walking in the street one night in Bar Ilan and Shmuel Nevi, one of the most main intersections, on a Thursday night before Shabbos, and a bunch of young yeshiva boys in black hats and suits were standing blocking traffic. And a woman came, and a car stopped. There was a woman comes out with a sheitel. She was a woman, I guess, from the Mizrahi community. Husband was sitting there with a tzitzis out and a beard, and she was visibly pregnant. She looked like she was in the 8th or 9th month, and she came out and she says, "Please, I have little children at home. I don't feel I need to go. Please let me through." And they wouldn't move. And she asked them again with respect. And I was standing a few feet away. I just stopped to look, and I saw a yeshiva boy, so-called quotation yeshiva boy, spit right in her face, spit in her eye.
Yeah, I've seen situations like that.
And it was like, as much as I've heard and read to see it, obviously going over to him and ripping off his shirt and his black jacket and hat and white shirt would be inappropriate. But what I did think at the time, I said, if this was the time of the Yom Kippur War, if this was at a time when there was the Lebanon War and bombs were flying and Israel was in miklots, would this have happened? Would Jews have got together? They would be there for each other. Unfortunately, this is the curse of Gullus. Yes, that we.
My producer tells me that the Lubavitch Rebbe once said there's two eras in Klal Yisrael: Siberia and Suburbia. So and that the latter is more challenging.
Excellent. 100%.
Suburbia is more challenging. It's a great subject for a panel of sociologists and historians maybe to be able to understand how we. I don't want to get in this direction now because I want to discuss something else, but. How are we going to get to what we're working for, which is, redemption and geula? How are we going to get there if we have to build these types of, dire circumstances that we live on in order to be able to flourish? If we can't handle, our free choice, that's also a gift. That's also a gift from God. But that's a conversation, perhaps for another time.
Look, I just say, then Chazal tell us that. The Mashiach will come. It will be a Dor Kulo Zakai Kulo Chayav, a generation that will be so bad that there will be no hope for them if they don't get redeemed at the moment, or a generation that's so good that deserves to be redeemed. Obviously, we're trying our best that we should be Dor Kulo Zakai, that we deserve it, and unfortunately not the other way. And there's a lot to be proud of what we're doing, but there's a lot to be fearful.
Hasidic philosophy also talks about Dir Tachtain. The Kadosh Baruch Hu desired and why create this world? He desired a lowly world that could elevate itself to godliness. What is Tachtain? When the Eibishter wants Tachtain, Lubavitch Rebbe writes in his Sichas very often, Tachtain she'ein Tachtain mimenu. God is perfection. He's completeness. It's not a compromised Tachtain. And I think we're heading in that direction. A Tachtain she'ein Tachtain mimenu, a lower world that is nothing lower than it. I think we're headed in that direction. And I'm saying these words, but it gives me a bad feeling. It gives me a very bad feeling.
It's uplifting to go when you have, to spend 2 nights ago with a family that's been destroyed by a relative that had done something that's so inappropriate and embarrassing to the community, to the family, and dealing with them, trying to lift them up. It's very disheartening. But then yesterday, I go to my son's yeshiva Chofetz Chaim, where my younger son, was given the chabura on a very incredible, deep Talmudic topic on Chalipin, and sitting there with a group of friends and offering his own ideas and being challenged by other young men, brilliant young men, going back and forth, and walking by the Beis Medrash with a few hundred boys sitting and learning, and arguing and yelling at each other with great enthusiasm and excitement. It uplifts you. So it's both. It's you need some of that, and it's Klal Yisrael, Baruch Hashem. We have a lot of good things to show for it. We're going to have a Siyum Hashas in a few weeks. That's going to bring 100,000 Jews together. It's uplifting, and it gives us chizuk and to deal with sometimes the underbelly.
The bitter with the sweet.
Right, and we just hope we'll have more sweet than bitter.
So just in for the point of reference and context, we're talking on Friday. On a Friday morning. It's, I think, November 29th today, right? November 29th, so people should know we're referring to things. We may be referring to some things. People that are viewing this, we may be referring to some things that are going to happen in the future. We're not soothsayers or people that can talk about the future, but we, so just in the interest of context, you're heading to Eretz Yisrael next week. For the yard site of your daughter, who I remember well from the few times that we spent together in hotels over Pesach over the years. And fifth yard site?
Fourth yard site.
Fourth yard site? So it's 4 years. It's 4 years. She was a young girl. But you and your wife have done some remarkable things in her memory. And one of those things addressed what I consider to be the Achilles heel of the Frum community today, which is the idea of shidduchim. I mean, you mentioned many, many problems that exist. And some of them are extreme and pitiful and have to be addressed by professionals. But when it comes to shidduchim, I am very uncomfortable with the idea when for example, Rabbi Koldetsky, by the time people see this, they have been here already, but he's coming next week, and he's going to give chizuk about shidduchim. I don't understand why shidduchim have to be couched in the same terms as someone that needs a refuah shlema, and someone that needs parnasa, and someone needs a shidduch. I don't. It's like the answer to the question that we used to have in high school: which one doesn't belong? It doesn't belong there. This is like a normal social thing has been turned into a crazy, desperate emergency type of situation. But you, through the organization you formed, Ohel Sarala, in memory of your daughter, tell us you addressed it with success, and give us a little bit of background.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I agree with you, Larry, that calling it a crisis would be maybe an improper word, but it's truly devastating for families that are suffering through this process. And I don't mean suffering in the sense of just busy with checking out names and etc. I'm talking about families that used to be in the hundreds, but are today in the thousands. And I say this without any exaggeration because I have a list of those, many of them, in the thousands of women, girls or young women over the age of 30 years old that have not found their bashert and have no prospects. The phone doesn't ring, nobody calls, nobody suggests. There are thousands of them, unfortunately, which is affecting not just, of course, their families and the pain that they're going through and the loneliness, but what's happened to all the next generation of Klal Yisrael. There are tens of thousands of babies that won't be born because there's so many women. I just give you an example. One family that we try very hard. They have 7 daughters. 5 Baruch Hashem are married. 2 are not. Both of them are already over 40 years old, and each of their other daughters have, I think, a minimum of 6 to 7 children. 2 of them even have more. And they're going to get married, and they're going to have children. And these two, it's so painful to watch. So something has to be done, and whatever has to be done, you make one shidduch, it's worth everything. And unfortunately, people say, if I'm not a shadchan, I don't do it. And I know people that when their kids are involved in it, they see it, they sense it. The second their last child gets married, they'll never pick up the phone to read a shidduch again. And it's hurtful, and it's something that we need to do. I've always been concerned about it. I've worked on it. I've tried. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu really threw something in our lap that was just absolutely incredible. Take the quick essay. I've written about it, and mostly in your paper, but which I want to appreciate that. I think that Five Town Jewish Times and the Gordon family have an integral role in the success of Ohel Sarala. And I want to thank you for that, and so do all the people out there that have met their bashert. It started here, and you get a lot of credit for it. So what happened was that unfortunately, as you mentioned, we had a tragic loss in our family as our youngest daughter. It's a life changer, and when we got up from Shiva and we brushed ourselves off, I said to my wife that we know many people in this way. I've gone to many Shiva houses of people losing children, and I've spent time with these families, and I've seen it. People they remain broken the rest of their lives, and they just can't function beyond just going through the regular day-to-day. We didn't want to be that. We didn't want to become that. So the only way to do it is to focus all your energy and your grief and every emotion that you can muster up and do something good with it. So I told my wife at the time, I said, we need to do something special. And I want to do something, felt shidduchim need something extra focus. I want to focus on shidduchim. My wife at that time said to me, but she was 17 years old. What does that have to do with shidduchim? I said, you don't understand. The fact that Hashem decided that was her, she filled her role in her life, whatever her role of her neshama was, holy neshama, I believe. But she wasn't so good to have a family and to have children and leave a legacy. So if we can make shidduchim on her, in her schos, every child that we born will be her child, will be her legacy. And we need to focus on it. And the question is how to do it. And I told my wife, we're not going to decide something today. We'll daven and we'll think about it and we'll look for opportunities to find the right thing. It was only a little while later, a few weeks later, Hashem dropped it in my lap. And that's how it evolved. I actually had it started because I had two women come to me, age of 40 years old, and they're incredible young women. They have a group of friends that they get together with all the time, to mechazik each other, all over the age of 40. All wonderful girls that each of us would want our sons to marry them. They are perfect. Just somehow, the mazel passed them by. And they came to ask me a question on a Thursday night. It was in the summertime, whether it was about 3.5 years ago, and asked me if they would the concept of maybe freezing their eggs because they know they will get married, but it may be too late for them biologically. Can they do that halachically? It was an intense conversation, difficult conversation, and I said it's really above my pay grade to discuss all the ramifications. I want to speak to some poskim, and I said I'm going to go to our David Feinstein for them, and I would do that the following week. This was Thursday night. I have a summer home up in the country in South Fallsburg, and we went out for Shabbos. And Shabbos morning, I'm walking with my wife, taking a walk, and we bump into our neighbors, summer neighbors, the famous Rav Shlomo Bachner and his wife from Boni Olam. It was incredible what these kids they've given their life to this organization, and I think they have today over 10,000 babies born. I think maybe more. They're all over the world. And I said, "Oh, Rav Shlomo," and I started telling him this question that came to me, and how would he address it, and who does he think I should go to discuss this complex. And we started talking about it. And then he shared with me, he says, I have to share with you. It happened a few months ago. It was by Aaron Leib Steinman's. That was the Gadol Hador of the previous generation, a man who lived till 103 years old, who led Klal Yisrael for 2 decades. And he said he was very close to him because he had helped Rav Shlomo. Bachman had actually helped Rav Steinman's own family members who were having difficulty with having children. So he walked into him and he looked at him and says, "Oh, Rav Shlomo," and he says, he looked very tired, and he said to him, in Yiddish, he said to him, "The zwei Sachen, was los mir nicht schlafen, the 2 things that don't let me sleep." And Rav Shlomo Bachman looked at him, all of Klal Yisrael's problems are on your head. So what 2 things? So he was quiet for a few moments, and he said to him, the 2 things are so many older single girls are not getting married. And second of all, so many couples today that are unable to have children, having fertility issues. And he's sitting quietly. Those two things don't let me sleep. And for a few moments, he's very quiet. Then he says to him, these two things are intertwined. And he explained something. He just quoted a pasuk that we all learn in third grade that we all know. And he said that the pasuk says when Sarah said to Avram to marry Hagar, which we read about just a few weeks ago, it says, maybe I will build from there. So he said, what do you mean? You're not, Avram, you'll build with Hagar. What does that do with me? What do you mean I will build? So the concept is, he says, if I mazaka you to have a child, then I will be zocha to have a child. And then a few psukim later, all of a sudden, she's pregnant. So he said that the singles will help the couples with their fertility treatments, both in davening for them, as well as any financial support to help them because its costs are prohibitive. And the couples will daven for the singles. They'll work together for each other. It could bring, and it would be a tremendous chus.
That started 3 years ago?
Started 3.5 years ago was the concept. It was actually Sukkot's issue of the Five Towns paper and the Mishpacha magazine that I kicked it off 3 years ago.
You wrote me the numbers this morning. So how many shtuchim were made?
We crossed, Baruch Hashem, this week, more than 700 engagements, marriages, in a little bit over 3 years, and over 250 babies born, Baruch Hashem.
And with the singles, the shidduchim davening for the couples that are having difficulty.
Right, we give them names. They don't know each other. We have a central base. We don't know each other. It's anonymous. All they have is the singles through Ohel Sarala, which my wife is running the organization together with Boni Olam. A single reaches out to us through our website. We give them the names of a couple. Hebrew names only. They don't know who the names who they are. The couple gets her name, the single's name, and men also. We have a lot of men singles that have also male singles that have applied, and we give them the names. And of course, there's no minimum, no maximum. If they want whatever money they give towards that couple, it could. We have someone that gives $10 a month. I have someone who gives $1,000 a week.
So the idea is to help them defray the expenses of the fertility.
Right, it's helping them with the tefillos and with helping them. And I remember we started things, a lot of work. It took us, tremendous amount of work to get this organized and put in websites, etc. And I remember telling my wife, I don't know what's going to be with this, but we have Stein. Rav Steinman is behind this. It was his idea, and his school, his bracha, he's the Gadol Hadar. I said, if we do this for 5 years and we can make 3 shidduchim, it'll be worth everything. Yeah. It'll be worth all our efforts.
Of course, yeah.
And this will be, those children coming from those 3 couples will be our daughter's legacy. Those will be a credit to her. That's the legacy that she would leave in this world. And it started going. You go
to all these weddings?
Oh, so impossible to go to all the weddings.
You might be as busy as an 8th grade Rebbe going to bar mitzvahs.
Right. Truth is, we can't. First of all, it is anonymous. So sometimes it happens that I just say a incredible story that just we get. It happened. We actually had put them on a video, an incredible video. But a girl got engaged. She was going out for 7 years and hadn't had a date in 4. And she got engaged, and she writes us this email. She says she credits, because she thought she's tried everything, and nothing worked. She credits the only reason why she's engaged is because this couple davened for her. So she said she'd like to invite the couple to her wedding. And she said so we explained to them that it's all anonymous, but if you want to invite the couple to your wedding, we can't give you their name because they may not want their name given over, but you can send us the invitation, and you don't mind your name given, we'll forward it to them. So she gave us the invitation, we forwarded it to them. They wrote back, please tell Akala that we were thrilled at her engagement and thrilled to be there at her chasana. It was maybe 2 months later, we forgot about it. We get an email in the morning. The husband of this couple writes an email and says, please forward this to the Kala. We apologize with greatest apologies that we were not able to make it last night. We very much wanted to come, but let me explain to you why we couldn't come. In the morning, my wife woke up. She didn't feel well, and when she went to work, she fainted in work. She's a teacher. She fainted, and they quickly took her to the hospital. I met her there, and Baruch Hashem, my wife is going to be in the hospital for the next few days on bed rest because we found out yesterday that she's pregnant, the day of their wedding.
Wow.
And that's why we couldn't be there. And the end of the story is that this Kala, 9 months later, and this young couple was the kvatas at the bris of the son of this family, and Baruch Hashem, a few months later, this couple who now are proud parents of a baby boy, or the kvatas at the child that was born, the boy that was born for this couple, this girl that got engaged.
Well, Rabbi Ginzberg, that says that there's hope for us. Our previous introductory conversation about some troubling things notwithstanding. So there is daylight out there. There is hope. And of course, it's great work. And, we're out of time for now. But I appreciate you coming in, Rabbi Aryeh Zev Ginzberg, the rabbi of the Chofetz Chaim Torah Center in Cedarhurst, New York. And there's a lot of subject matter that we need to cover, and hopefully we'll do it again soon. But in the meantime, I want to thank you very much for joining us. Be well.
We'll have an opportunity to discuss the future initiatives.
Yes, Mr. Shem. Thank you.
Okay.